Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube channel. First of all, I want to say that I hope you are well and that all of your loved ones are keeping healthy and staying safe. I know we're living in such difficult times at the moment, and that's why today I wanted to film a video about books that I hope will bring you some comfort and some solace if you're feeling particularly anxious right now. I know that I'm definitely more anxious at the moment. I always turn to my bookshelves when I want to distract myself and to have a bit of escapism and just not worry about current situations, at least for a little while. So the books I'm going to suggest are definitely those kinds of comfort reads. I know some people like to actually read more about the problems that are happening in the world, so some people might deliberately seek out books about the flu pandemic or about the plague or things like that. I've seen some people wanting to read those books on Instagram, but that's not really how I am. I like a lot more escapist reads when I'm actually anxious about a situation. So the books I'm going to be talking about today are exactly those kinds of books. They're the ones that I turn to when I need a bit of comfort and a bit of laughter and joy in my life. So I know so many of us right now are having to practice social distancing and are self-isolating. I feel, my heart really goes out to the people who can't do that right now, who don't have the luxury to be able to work from home. But for those of us who are at home a lot more, then I hope that you'll be able to find some time to spend with your books, and I hope that these suggestions will be welcome for you, especially as what's so wonderful is even if you can't order these books or find them as easily, although I always would encourage people to support their independent bookshops, and a lot of independent bookshops are still open, and they're also delivering books to people as well. So it is really important to support independent businesses right now, but if for any reason you would rather not go out or would rather not receive a delivery, then remember ebooks and Audible books are other great alternatives. So you can download the Kindle app on your phone or your iPad, or if you have a Kindle, then that's great. And I also do think that Audible is a brilliant thing as well. You can listen to so many fantastic books as audiobooks, which I love to do too. But let's get on to my recommendations. So Rosamund Pilcher is an author I always turn to when I'm in need of real sort of comfort reading. She's one of my favourite authors, and The Shell Seekers is probably her most famous book. It was the first novel of hers that I ever read. I read it just before I went to Cornwall for the first time, because part of the book is set in Cornwall. Quite a few of her books actually are set in Cornwall, and she's got a wonderful way of describing a landscape, really giving a feel for a place. I think she's a wonderful writer. Her books are quite thick, but you get through them very quickly, and they're wonderful to be able to just completely immerse yourself in another world. I love the character Penelope in this book. She's, I think, in her 60s when the novel starts out. She has 3 grown-up children. 2 of them she doesn't get on with very well. There's a lot of awkward family dynamics going on, and this heightens when her son wants her to sell a painting that Penelope's father painted, when it's discovered that he's now, since his death, become a much more influential artist and much more famous than he was in his lifetime, and his paintings have become much more valuable. So Penelope is put under pressure to sell this painting, but she really doesn't want to. But what I love about this book is I love Penelope herself. You know how sometimes when you read a book and you just feel this real sense of connection to someone, and you think, oh, other people are like that, other people are like me. And that's what I felt when I read this book. Penelope is such a sort of homemaker, and she loves cooking for people, and I really empathize with that. I also love to cook for other people. I, believe in sort of sitting down and having a meal, and Rosamund Pilcher is so good at describing meals in books. She makes you hungry just reading it, but also the sort of charm of a scrubbed wooden table, and she really describes the ritual of having a meal with someone so well in her books, and I really, really love that about them. They're just very sweet, gentle reads. Coming Home is another favourite of mine as well. This is quite a big book, but again, you just really lose yourself in this world. It's a coming of age story about a young girl who is living in Penzance, and she becomes friends with a family who have this beautiful country house right outside of Penzance, and she spends a lot of her time with this family, but it goes right up until World War II and also during World War II, when Judith sort of comes of age, and there's some romance and everything in it too. So it's a real sort of coming of age story and family saga, really. But yes, I love the Cornwall setting for this one too. And yes, I really love Rosamund Pilcher. She just is such a comforting writer, and bad things happen sometimes in some of her books, but the way that the characters respond to these events helps me, I think, to find courage in more difficult situations in my own life too. So Rosamund Pilcher, one of my number one authors for when I just want a bit of comfort and solace. And then I've noticed that so many people are talking about wanting to still make connections, obviously, with their friends, even when they're isolating themselves. And a lot of people are sending handwritten letters to people at the moment, which I think is such a lovely thing to do. And a brilliant book to inspire a bit more, Snail Mail, is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff. And this is a collection of letters that Helen wrote. I think she started to write them in 1949, and she was living in New York at the time, and she sent a letter to a bookshop on 84 Charing Cross Road, which is a famous bookshop district in London, asking for some books. And then this is a collection of her correspondence with that bookshop, or with the proprietor of the bookshop. So this is a real book for book lovers. There's lots of discussion of books back and forth in these letters, but it's also really interesting in terms of looking at the rationing that was still happening in Britain after the war. Helen sort of sent food from the States for the bookseller and his colleagues. So there's a lot of interesting period detail as well. It's just a charming collection of letters and a really sweet real life story. So this is a real favourite of mine too. And it's all about the unlikely connections that people can make across the world, but how those really benefit your life and add so much joy to your life. Then I've brought a few books out that always make me laugh, because laughter is definitely wonderful therapy. One of these is Three Men in a Boat, to say nothing of the dog, by Jerome K. Jerome. This is such a fantastic story. I think it was written set in sort of Edwardian England, and it's about three men who are friends, and they decide to take a boat along the Thames and travel along the Thames as a holiday, and they bring their dog Montmorency with them. And all sorts of mayhem really ensues from that, but it's just such an entertaining, funny, light read. You can read this one really quickly and it's bound to put a smile on your face. This is a real classic. There's a famous scene in the book where one of the friends describes going around the Hampton Court maze, and that's just one of the funniest passages. It's absolutely hilarious. They get so lost, it's put me off ever going around Hampton Court maze myself, I have to say. But yeah, just so many classic moments from this. I love it. It's brilliant. And it's really good on Audible too. Ian Carmichael reads it and he's perfect. So really recommend the Audible of that as well. Another book that makes me laugh is The Diary of a Nobody by George and Weedon Grossmith. This is set, well, this was written in sort of late Victorian, this was written in the late Victorian era, and it's set in London, and it's about a very ordinary middle-class man, but it's just a work of sort of comic genius. I mean, very, you know, understated, very British style comedy, but it really is just such a funny book, mainly because the narrator, the sort of nobody who writes the diary, is just so unself-aware of himself and also what other people are really thinking. So yes, I really recommend this one. This always makes me laugh as well. And then for real comic genius, there is of course P.G. Wodehouse. I adore P.G. Wodehouse. I've read so many of his books. The Jeeves and Wooster series is my very favourite series. This is the The Inimitable Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse, and this is quite an early book in the Jeeves and Wooster stories. This is a collection of short stories, so you can dip in and out, and I really love this collection. It's so good. But yeah, I love the Jeeves and Wooster books. I also really like his golf short stories, rather randomly, because I don't play golf. I know nothing about golf, but his short stories that are set on the links are just so hilarious. But I mean, he is a comic genius. If you've never read P.G. Wodehouse, now is the time. And again, I listen to the audiobooks of these so often. Make sure you get Jonathan Cecil reading them. He's the very best voice, I think, for P.G. Wodehouse. And oh, they just have me in stitches. They really do. I mean, these books make me laugh out loud. They're hilarious. Jeeves is Bertram Wooster's man, his gentleman's personal gentleman, and Bertie is always getting into scrapes and Jeeves always gets him out of those scrapes. So the plots are always very convoluted and you wonder how on earth Bertie's going to get out of this one, but Jeeves always saves the day in the end. So yeah, if you've never read P.G. Wodehouse, please do, because he is brilliant. And then this is a book I read quite recently. It's called Miss Carter and the Ifrit, I think that's how you say it, by Susan Alice Kirby. And this is really a very silly story, but really just a fun, light-hearted read. It's a bit like Five Children in It by E. Nesbit, but for grown-ups. Because what happens is a young, well actually not that young, a middle-aged woman, Georgina, who's one of these surplus single women, who's never found love in her life so far. One day she burns a log in her fireplace, and an Ifrit, which is like a sort of genie, appears and then starts granting her wishes. This book was written during World War II, so there's a lot of descriptions of amazing food that the Ifrit provides Georgina that, you know, just wouldn't have been possible to get at that time. And but it's just a really funny, a bit silly, but really funny, light-hearted story, and it made me chuckle. I enjoyed it, so I thought I would shout this one out as well. And then I wanted to share The Darling Buds of May by H.E. Bates. I adore the Darling Buds of May series. I didn't read these first actually. When I was really little, I watched the TV series of The Darling Buds of May, which starred a very young Catherine Zeta-Jones. If you've never seen that, then do watch them. They'd be a great binge watch right now. And these books are just so feel good. And so is the TV series. They're just the perfect feel good, light, escapist reads. I adore them. They're set in this farm in Kent, and they're about a very happy-go-lucky family. Pop Larkin as the sort of head of the household, although Ma Larkin is also very important. And it's all about their family and what they get up to, but it's just such a brilliant, light-hearted and funny read. So I really recommend The Darling Buds of May as well. This is actually a little series of books. I think there are 4 or 5 in the series, but this is the first one, so start here. And then another author I turn to for sort of comfort and light-hearted reading is Marjorie Sharp. And this is one of my very favourites. It's Clooney Brown by Marjorie Sharp. This, I think, is set in the interwar years, and it's about a young woman called Clooney Brown whose uncle kind of despairs of her. He thinks she's going off the rails, so to teach her a lesson, he sends her off to be a maid at a grand house in the English countryside. But Clooney Brown is a very determined, very unsquashable young woman, and this is sort of the adventures that happen to her and the family at this house that she goes to. And again, it's just a really fun, light-hearted read. But Marjorie Sharp, I think, is a very talented writer. She's not as well known as she deserves to be. And if you like things like Cold Comfort Farm and Nancy Mitford, books like that, then I think you really should try Marjorie Sharp. And Clooney Brown is a great place to start. Okay, next, I adore Alexander McCall Smith. I love all of his series, and they're all real comfort reads for me. Like, I love the Scotland Street series. I love his Corduroy Mansion ones. I love the Number One Ladies Detective series. But today I wanted to highlight the Sunday Philosophy Club books, which is one of the Isabel Dalhousie novels. This is the first in the series. Isabel is a middle-aged woman who is a philosopher, so she is always very much concerned over questions about morals and ethics, but she's also a very observant woman, and she's very tuned in to the human character and what makes people tick. So she also becomes a bit of an amateur sleuth. So there's often some kind of mystery that runs through these books that Isabel manages to solve. Obviously these characters in the books progress and develop a lot over the series. There are quite a few titles in this series now, and there's a lovely romance as well that develops for Isabel throughout the books, which I also really enjoy. But yes, I really recommend this one. It's the perfect sort of calming read, I think, for right now. And I love Isabel. I think she's a fabulous character. And Alexander McCall Smith's books are always, I think, gentle reads, but they ask quite big questions about life as well and get you reflecting on your own values a lot. And I really enjoy that about his writing. So if you haven't read these yet, then definitely give the Sunday Philosophy Club a go. Okay, and then next, I love to read, as you know, if you've watched my cozy mystery videos, which I'll pop a link up here if you haven't seen that, because obviously Golden Age mysteries are really great reads for this sort of time and when you want a bit of comfort. I adore them, and I'm actually listening to a lot of Miss Silver mysteries right now by Patricia Wentworth. But because I did a whole video on sort of Golden Age crime, I'm not going to talk about that today, but I did want to highlight this book, which is Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. And this is very much a sort of modern take on Golden Age crime in a way, but it's a really clever twist on detective fiction, I think. So it starts out, a publisher is given a manuscript of a famous mystery writers, and it's his new book, and she starts reading the manuscript. So part of it is sort of set in the present day with the publisher who's reading the manuscript, but part of this book is actually the manuscript, which is set in the 1950s. So there's a really clever sort of framing to this novel, which I really enjoyed. And what happens is the mystery writer who's written this manuscript gets murdered. And actually a lot of the clue to solving who's murdered him lies within his manuscript. So it's just really clever. I really enjoyed this one, and it really kept me turning the pages to find out who did it, both sort of within the manuscript and then also the crime itself, the sort of real life crime in the book. So yeah, I really recommend The Magpie Murders. And then I wanted to highlight another of my very favourite writers, that's James Herriot, and this is All Creatures Great and Small. This is a whole series of books, but this is the first in the series, and these were also made into an amazing television show that was on quite a few years ago, but is still very well worth seeking out. James Herriot's books are based on his real life experiences as a vet in sort of 1930s Yorkshire, and they're absolutely hilarious. I love how the animals themselves become characters in James Herriot's books, but it's also really the people that he encounters on a daily basis, especially his very eccentric colleagues, but also the local farmers and so on in the Yorkshire Dales. It's just absolutely hilarious. James Herriot is another masterful comic writer, but I also love his descriptions of the English countryside, his passion for where he lived in Yorkshire, also his real sort of humanity and kindness really comes over in these books. He was clearly a lovely man, and also his real love for animals. I'm such an animal lover myself, so I love that about his stories. But these are really sweet, gentle, beautiful books, so I highly recommend them. And again, they actually make lovely audiobooks as well. I have all of them on Audible too, and really recommend them as audiobooks as well. And then my final recommendation is Angela Thirkell. She wrote sort of very gentle books as well that are set in this little English village and about all of the sort of characters in this village. This is the first in the series, High Rising, and it's about a lady novelist is one of the primary characters, and her son, and she's made quite a lot of money writing, but then it's about her interactions with other people who come to High Rising, and it's just a really sweet, charming read. This one is a bit Christmassy, I have to say, this first one in the book, but it isn't all set around Christmas, so you know, it would still be fine to read now. But there are also, it's a whole series as well, so there are other titles that you could pick to start with. They've been republished by Virago in this really attractive set with beautiful covers. So I really recommend these. If you're a fan of like Miss Reed, for instance, then I think that you would really enjoy Angela Thirkell as well. But anyway, those are my recommendations if you want some comforting, cozy books at the moment that will just take you out of yourself. I hope that you've enjoyed my recommendations. Let me know if any of these books are favourite of yours, and do let me know what your favourite comfort reading is as well. I'm sure I'm going to be planning some other videos around this theme. I think I might do something on my favourite children's book series, and also my own to be read pile, because obviously I've read all of these books, but I will maybe also share with you some of the books that I want to read that I haven't read yet, but I think that will be especially good reads for this uncertain time. But I hope you all keep safe and well, and keep your spirits up, and enjoy having some time to read too. I know there's a lot of you who have children at home and are working from home, and it's also all quite stressful, but I hope you'll be able to take some moments to yourself and enjoy some quiet reading time. Do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and remember to subscribe to my channel, which you can do by clicking my face that pops up on the screen. But take care of yourselves, and I'll be back again very soon with another video. Bye!